Hey there, in this tutorial we're going to make a little interface menu that we can access in a VR experience in Unity. So let's try it out. On the hierarchy, I'm going to right click and create an empty object that I will just name interface. I might even set it off with some lines here, some equal signs, just to make it clear that this is sort of its own thing here. I'm going to reset the transform, and then I'm going to right click on that interface to child something underneath it. And we're going to go down to XR and then UI canvas. And so what we're doing here is making a canvas that can be interacted with through XR controllers. So next we're going to shrink that canvas in size up here in its transform. I'm going to just sort of lower it down to 0.01 for now in all XYZ, and I'm going to raise it up just so I can see it. Then I'm going to create a background color, or in this case, image for the canvas. So we're going to right click on canvas, and this time we'll go to UI and image. So this image underneath canvas, I'm going to rename menu background. And I will set the color, in my case, I'm going to go black, but also lower the alpha, which is this A setting here. So red, green, blue, alpha, that's your transparency. So it'll just sort of like darken the background, but still be a little translucent. And finally, back in the canvas object, I'm going to make sure that order in layer is set to 1. This is to ensure that the text is going to pop out in front of the background. We're not going to end up with a layering problem. Okay, so now I'm going to right click on canvas again, and I'm looking for UI and then text mesh pro. And this may pop up with a window like this. Maybe first time you use Text Mesh Pro in your project, you might need to import TMP Essentials. So we would say yes to that. And that's going to bring in the necessary packages or what have you to use Text Mesh. It's tough to say. Text Mesh Pro. Now you could close this out and mess with the background and the text a little bit to get the shape and size you want. All right, so next thing I'm going to try is just adjusting the size of the menu background. I'm going to make this just a little bigger, maybe, yeah, just a little wider than it is long. And then I'm going to edit the text itself. So under text, there's a big component that has all sorts of adjustments. So the first here is the text input. So we can put something in here. I'm going to use this interface to make a reset button. So I'll say something like reset scene ? And then I will start making adjustments to things like font size, so that it all sits on one line. I can make adjustments to, now it's centered. All the sort of typical graphic design or word processing stuff you might expect. Up here, I can change its position relative to my background, and fonts and, all of that kind of stuff here. So when I'm happy with it, the next thing I'm going to do is make a button for this user interface. So on the background object, I'm going to right click and make another UI, and this time I'm going to use a button Text Mesh Pro. And this is going to allow me to create a button object that has text in it that we can edit through some of the same settings. So the button itself can be altered through size, color settings, and then here there's a couple of cool things like highlight color, pressed color, selected color that give it a little sense of animation when we press it. It also comes in with a child of its own, and that's the text. So instead of button, I could change it to like reset, something like that. If the width of the button shrinks, it might make the text appear to have gotten squished. So you might push it back the other direction to make it read the way you want it to. In my case, I'm going to create a cancel button as well. So I'm going to rename these objects. This one will be reset button, and then I'm going to duplicate this, and this one will be cancel button. So cancel button should say cancel, and then I want to lower it. So I'm going to go back out to the cancel button object and just move its Y position down a little bit so that I've got a menu here where I can do reset or cancel. And I might actually separate them instead of up and down. I might make them a little further apart here, left and right. That way we don't accidentally press one when we want to press the other. I'll get specific and make sure it's so this will be, you know, -20 on the Y, and this one will be -20 on the Y, so they line up well. And I could even make sure these are equal as well. So it looked like maybe 26 and -26 looked good to me. So I'm going to hit play and check how this looks in my device simulator. There it is, reset scene, reset or cancel. Okay, might not win any awards for graphic design, but it is a menu. And those are some of the steps you would follow to create the look of your menu. Now, we also want this menu to turn on when we press a button, and then we want the buttons in the menu to do something. I'm going to work backwards a little bit, I think, and start with the cancel button. So when you look at any of these buttons, they have an on-click list, kind of an event called on-click. We are pretty familiar with this sort of interface in the inspector from what we've been doing with XR interactions. So you just hit plus here to add a game object. In this case, we're going to take this whole interface and drag it in, and I'm going to go to game object, set active, and have it not be active. So when we hit cancel, the interface disappears. All right, so the reset button is going to work slightly differently. In this case, we're going to add a component, and it's going to be this load scene script. Now, I didn't write this script. I grabbed it from Unity's tutorial series called Create with VR. And so that's a whole series that you can check out where they make kind of like a VR room. And in particular, I'm grabbing this this reset from its user interface kind of unit inside this whole tutorial. So, you know, Unity has some great tutorials available on there. And in the template project for this, they have a lot of helper scripts that I'm going to lean on this one. So I'll show you how load scene works. So this uses an additional namespace besides the default. It has UnityEngine.scene management to do this, this sort of scene loading work. And then it has two functions in it that can be called. One is load scene using a name, and that name is a string, and a string is a variable that's like a word or a string of text. And then it could also reload current scene. So these are two things that this piece of code can do. We're going to reload current scene with it. So we're going to go to the reset button, and we're going to reference the reset button, load scene, and then we're going to reload current scene. And so that's functionally that's a reset. It's just going to reload this whole scene from the start. So now we've got our reset button and our cancel button. The only trick now is that we don't want to be looking at this all the time. So we need a system where we kind of press a button and bring this interface up. So this script, I'll be honest, I do not have a full understanding of all the features of it, and that's why I'm grabbing it from the pre-made Unity script rather than writing it myself. But I see that it uses the events and input system namespaces. This tooltip actions to check input action section seems to be where we pick the action that we're going to trigger, the button we're going to press. There are Unity events, which are on press and on release. And those Unity events are the things we've been using to, add objects to the list and then address them. We've been doing that a lot with the XR Interaction Toolkit. And then these are the various functions that it's checking, in terms of the buttons being pressed and being released. So it's relatively uncomplicated from what I can see, but I don't know my way around all of this stuff in the action system and event system. Luckily, Unity provided this, and I think it's a good tool to add to our project. And when we go down to the bottom, on button press is looking for an action. This is very small, very missable, but you see this word action here? We can go to plus and then say add binding. So this binding now has options, and we're going to go to path, and then we're going to go to XR controller. I'm going to go with the left hand, and I'm looking for optional controls. There are a whole lot of options here of controls on a general XR controller. I'm going to choose secondary button. So this is listening for a secondary button, and then there's on press and on release. And so I'm going to add a list to on press, and this is going to be my interface. And this time we're going to do game object set active true. And so that means that my interface object should start off. Then when I press my secondary button, it should turn on. And then if I hit cancel, it should turn off again. So there it is. We got no reset interface. I'm going to switch to my controller, and secondary button is N in the device simulator. So on an Oculus controller, it looks like that's called Y, the Y button. If you were after the menu button or something, you would just pick a different control rather than how we picked a secondary button. So now to test, I'm going to hit cancel, and my interface should go away. All right, very good. And then if I do N again, my interface should come back. And then this time we will try reset. And that resets my position and no interface. Perfect. The last thing you might be thinking though is, okay, that menu is just sitting there out in the beginning of your game. What if we need to reset later once we're in the room? Wouldn't we want this to come with us? So this is a slightly complicated answer. There is a way to have this canvas stuck right to the HMD, always in our vision. And that's here when we're under canvas. Instead of render mode world space, which treats it like an object in the world space, we could make it, only on the screen space of the camera or as an overlay. This could work, but a problem with this is in terms of like VR best practices, it can be weird to kind of like have something just shoved right over your eyes that are like in your way. And then the interface of touching the buttons doesn't work as well either because now it's not in the world space. So instead, what I think I'd like to do is child this object under our hand so that we can kind of look at it like a wristwatch or something like that. Okay, so now with a not insignificant amount of putzing around, I have this interface attached to my left hand in a way that it will always be with me, but it won't be stuck on my head in an awkward way. So then I can hit cancel, or I can hit reset, and that should put me back at the starting point. And this kind of tool would be very useful, of course, in a escape room, because if we accidentally drop an object where it can't be reached and it's the only way out of the room or something, this can allow us to reset to the beginning and give it another try. This same logic, incidentally, can be used to create an interface that, instead of making on-click be a reset button, it could do something like turn on or off your Ray interactor. So you could have a menu that said, like, do you want a Ray interactor or just a direct interactor? You could turn on or off something like the dynamic move provider, so that it might be a setting that would be like, would you like to only teleport or do you want dynamic motion? And by using the interface buttons and their on-click function, we could drag any of these game objects into this interface and then address any of their parameters to turn them on or off.